What? Why are you shaking your head?
You're welcome.
What's up, Fantasy Points? This is Outside the Box, Week 7. We are going to break down the main slate on DraftKings. I am here with the data goat, Scott Barrett. Scott, how are we doing today?
I'm doing good. Excited to be here. Thanks for having me. Very, very blessed. I think this is a tough slate. I think I have a really good grasp on this slate as a whole. I just think it feels like an MME week, which kind of stinks for me because I'm not an MME guy. And so there's like too many players I like. And so having trouble narrowing things down, more importantly, having trouble fitting all the pieces together, which is obviously the most important thing. So I'm going to need your help, Neil. I think this is your time to shine. I think this is a perfect Neil week. So we're going to walk the slate as we typically do. And I just need you to pick the right players that I talk about and then fit them perfectly in a well-correlated lineup that wins us $1 million. All
right.
So
yeah,
that's on you. No pressure.
Yeah, I feel like I can do that pretty easily here. It's funny talking about trying to build a lineup that makes a lot of sense, correlated well for a Millie Maker style contest. And then you look at this lineup that's on the screen. This is the Millie Maker winner from last week. It feels like a lineup that would just be like, if you listen to a podcast of like, here are the best plays on the slate and just don't think about correlating at all, you would come up with this exact lineup. Pretty fun one from last week to look at. But yeah, no, at the end we will build the perfect lineup, a Millie Maker winner at the end of the podcast. It's a big one. This is a $10 Millie this week, by the way, not $20.
That's right. This guy might be a time traveler. Sean Tucker at 0.0%. Jordan Love unstacked. Yeah, pretty wild. Shout out to us though. You see Joe Mixon there, 1.9%. We were one of the only shows out there that hyped him up, and we hyped him up a great deal. Shout out to my Houston sources on that one.
Well, here's another point about this particular lineup, Scott, is you were on the Baker Mayfield stack. I think you're the only person that I heard talk about stacking Baker Mayfield. You could have swapped out Jordan Love for Baker Mayfield in this lineup, and you would have beat this lineup. So if we had just played this lineup with a Baker Mayfield stack, Sean Tucker, I mean, that is a Neil-ass play right there.
I know.
I was not in on Sean Tucker at all, but like that is very much like my type of play.
When he was going nuclear, I was like, wait, was Tucker the RB2 you talked about? Because he made sense as leverage off of a super chalky Bucky Irving. But you were on Algier, who also went off. So
yeah, Algier worked out pretty well. I saw somebody won the afternoon slate with Algier. He was still like 2% owned on the afternoon only. So I had like 40% Algier on that slate. So I didn't quite get there, but it was cool to see that he was in the winning lineup on the afternoon only slate. Yeah, definitely was a strong play. So funny to see Sean Tucker in this lineup. Could have even been like Sean Tucker with Bucky Irving. I mean, man, that was a very strange week last week. But hey, it worked out for Joe Nip 166. Just the perfect combo of players. Even with Jalen Tolbert in there, just smashed the Millie. So cool to see. Also, not a lineup that I would have come up with in a billion years with, Sean Tucker, Chris Godwin, K. Dotton, Bucks defense, and no Baker Mayfield, and then Jordan Love with no Packers receivers. Just a pretty wild lineup, taking it down last week. But I don't think this is going to be the way you and I try to build going forward. So I don't think we should change our process. Do you think so?
No, I don't think so. We'll see when we're building. Maybe there's a naked quarterback and 4 players from one team we like and a RB2 at 0%.
Yeah, no, I don't see myself. I don't see myself making that type of lineup. All right. Well, let's move on. Talk about this upcoming slate. And actually, before we get here, Scott, just to talk about, I called you the football data goat, and you picking your guys. My highest scoring BBM lineup at the moment is the lineup that I labeled Scott Barrett's shitty ass team or something like that, because it was the one you just picked all your favorite players and did not allow me to correlate, is currently my highest scoring Best Ball Mania team. So yeah, we know you're pretty good at picking players. So hopefully we can find some of the best players.
That's awesome. I love to hear that. You were so mad that I didn't let you stack Josh Allen with anyone. And Yeah, Kincaid not doing anything. Do we have Amari on that team? That would be so funny.
We don't.
We
Yeah, I
ended
thought
up
we
with
might,
this
but no,
stuff.
we didn't.
That'd be so funny.
That would have been awesome. All right.
So we're gonna win a millie this week. We're gonna win the millie for underdog. What is the actual prize? 2 million?
1.5 for
Okay.
bet. Yeah.
All right. Well, we can just chop that up. That's nice.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, 750 each. We'll take it. All right. Top projected ownership on the slate: Jaden Daniels 15%, Geno Smith 15%, Sam Darnold 13%. Talking only quarterbacks for now. So let's start with the three chalky quarterbacks. Do you want to poke holes in any of these numbers? Are you going to be overweight to the field on any of them, or would you be in a 150 set? Anybody you're fading from this group?
Yeah, let's poke some holes, Neil. Let's do that. What is Andy Dalton? All right, so Andy Dalton's 4%, Jaden Daniels 15%. I love Jaden Daniels. Like, this is my Exodia quarterback. This is in my draft guide. I was like, here's what you do at the quarterback position this year. You draft Jaden Daniels and you log out. That's all you need to do. And so I love to see Jaden Daniels smashing. But he's not someone who strikes fear into my heart as a fade for tournaments. I worry about Carolina really pushing them, especially with Brian Robinson back. And so I question the upside. I mean, like there were two games where Washington didn't punt once, and he didn't break the slate. And so I worry about that. Like, honestly, I think Hilo made this case. He said he thinks if Andy Dalton stacked with like McLaurin and Deontay is a better tournament play than Jaden Daniels. I don't know that I'd go that far but far. That
far is the word you're looking for.
Thank you. That far.
That fork. Yeah, that fork.
But I mean, factor in ownership, and I certainly get it. He's not going to be. I don't know. I think there's better plays. But he's certainly a great one. Awesome talent. Like last week was just like the dream spot for him. But Geno Smith is a more aggressive fade for me. Shout out to Ryan Heath and his advanced matchups column. He wrote a laundry list of reasons why this is not the spot for Geno Smith. It is not a good schematic matchup. Atlanta too ranks bottom 6 in passing yards per game allowed. A number of other factors. I greatly prefer Kirk Cousins. I think it's a better matchup for him. And so super chalky Geno Smith. Can very easily see myself getting away from that. Sam Darnold, I want to go all in on. I'm not going to. I just really, really, really like Sam Darnold. I love this spot. I think it's an amazing spot for him. Darnold double stacks should go ham. But I also really like Jared Goff, who, like, if you scroll down, is at 1%. And so, sure, maybe the running backs score their 3 rushing touchdowns as they're apt to do. But if not, if they only get 1, if they get 0, I think he could very easily break the slate. But yeah, certainly highest exposure quarterback I want to be Sam Darnold. But there's a lot of quarterbacks I like, and I'm okay kind of getting off of the top 2 chalky ones.
See, I really like Jaden Daniels. I think I'm going to lean into that chalk a little bit on Jaden Daniels. I guess I get it because we do have some cheap quarterbacks. Kirk Cousins being one of them. Sam Darnold, like, relatively cheap relative to Jaden Daniels, who like very easily could outscore him. But I think the floor ceiling combo for Jaden Daniels is good enough that I'm just planning to eat that chalk a little bit this week, because it's not like I kind of thought he was going to be like 30% owned, so 15% feels fair to me. I assume he's not going to be a full fade for you. You're not like out on Jaden Daniels. It's just you'd rather go to the lower owned stacks.
Yeah, no, certainly not a full fade. It's just, and maybe this isn't the best argument, but it's just easier to make these arguments when the guy, he did see a price hike and he is the chalkiest quarterback of the slate, but it's just, he hasn't had like a real slate breaking performance yet. where we're talking like 33 plus DraftKings fantasy points. He's been amazing. He ranks behind only Lamar in fantasy points per dropback. You look at EPA per play, your yards per pass attempt, or completion percentage. And then you have this Panthers matchup where it's like, oh, they're bottom 3 in opposing passer rating, they're bottom 3 in fantasy points per dropback allowed. But that's not the issue with Jaden. It's always like dropbacks. Like the per dropback efficiency is elite. And does he get that this week against the Panthers? I don't know. I don't know that he does. And so anyway, that's just the concern. That's a more nitpicky one. Geno Smith, I'm more comfortable fading at 15% for sure.
Yeah, definitely agree with you on the Geno Smith fade. How about Daniel Jones stands out as like one of the best point per dollar. Is he the best point per dollar? Yeah, he's the best point per dollar quarterback on the slate at 5,400. Nice matchup with the Eagles. Gets Malik Neighbors back. How do you feel about 8% on Daniel Jones?
Yeah, I don't know. Because I don't want to go against our projections. Our projections say he's the top point per dollar value, and it's a slate starved with value with a lot of sexy wide receivers, even tight ends, running backs to pay up for this week. It's just, I never feel good about a somewhat chalky Daniel Jones because he's Daniel Jones.
Right.
And then add in the left tackle, Andrew Thomas isn't playing. I think that could be really bad. But yeah, I'm going to have some exposure because shout out to Chris Wecht, our projections are, and shout out to our projections. We've had the most accurate projections in the space among players that matter. So players projected for 6 or more points. We've been best in the industry. I think if you include everyone, so players under 6 points, we're like second best. But so yeah, and we've been best by a landslide at quarterback. So shout out to Chris Wecht again. Yeah, I don't want to full fade our projections here. So that doesn't bother me. Easy stack with Neighbors.
And only 8%. I mean, chalky in the sense that he's the 4th highest ownership on the slate, but like it's so spread out. So that's kind of the reason that I'm okay with going to Jaden Daniels. Because like, yeah, he is technically the chalkiest quarterback on the slate, but the ownership is so spread out on these quarterbacks that I feel like 15% still feels fair. 8% Daniel Jones seems totally fine to me. So yeah, I think willing to go there with Daniel Jones. Who else do you like? So let's we've kind of gone over all of the we've gone over all the quarterbacks over 5% ownership. So everybody else pretty contrarian. So tell me who are some of the Scott Barrett favorites?
Yeah, so you are seeing, like nearly 45% concentrate around these 3 quarterbacks. So I do think it's a good week to play some super low owned stacks. Like I said, Sam Darnold's probably my favorite in a vacuum, but we know quarterbacks are positively correlated together. And there are these 3 uber sexy games with this massive over under. It's very easy to imagine a scenario where the opposite quarterback was the one that you needed. And so Jared Goff at 1%, I really like that. Kirk Cousins, 4%, a fraction of Geno Smith. I really like that. And then there's some more, quarterbacks that should be higher on our radar. They're just not in these sexy games. Or games as sexy. And Joe Burrow stands out to me at 2%. He's balling out this year. He leads all quarterbacks in passer rating. He ranks 3rd in DraftKings fantasy points per game since week 2 with, I said with Jaden Daniels, like, does he have a game with over 28.4 DraftKings fantasy points? And Joe Burrow has 2 such games, and he had a 38-point game. Kirk Cousins, had the best game of any quarterback this season. Browns are actually just like a neutral matchup on paper if you look at the schedule adjusted stuff, but it's a perfect schematic matchup. Maybe that's worth you pulling up while I ramble for a little bit. The quarterback coverage shell tool in the data suite.
All right.
But basically, Cleveland runs man and single high coverage at the highest rate in the league. Burrow leads all quarterbacks in fantasy points per dropback against single high. Against man coverage, his fantasy points per dropback increases by 71%. So if you just click on coverage grade, you'll see Joe Burrow, best schematic matchup of the week. It's worth a 14% boost to his fantasy point per dropback average. Sam Darnold comes in at number 2. So both of those guys get a nice little schematic boost. But anyway, Jamar Chase shreds man coverage, shreds single high coverage. T. Higgins is popping as a top value. So Burrow doubles broke the slate 2 weeks ago. Why not again at 2%? I listened to 3 podcasts this week, and every single one hyped up Tyreek Hill as this like amazing low owned, high upside tournament winner. And it's, Jamar Chase is coming in at 2%. Tyreek's like 5%. And he's also like the fantasy wide receiver 1 this year. Like that doesn't really make too much sense to me. So I like Burrow. I also like Jordan Love. He was on the winning Millie lineup last week, unstacked.
Yeah.
He averages nearly 24 fantasy points per game this year. That's the best on this slate. He's averaging 23 over his last 12 games. That would again rank best on the slate. He higher floor than you think. He hit at least 17 in all those games but one. It's a top 10 matchup on paper. His home game, his big Achilles heel has been the blitz. Houston's not really blitzing this year. So I like Jordan Love. I like Andy Dalton a little bit, like I said. Yeah, there's some other quarterbacks in play, but I think those are my favorites.
Jordan Love, worth noting, Houston also missing some key defensive players or starters in the defense. Safety Jimmy Ward is out. Rookie cornerback Kamari Lassiter out for this game. And I believe there are a few other injuries in the Houston defense as well. So even though it is I think it's a decent defense, they've been a little bit vulnerable to the passing game, and seems like a good spot with, I always think about it like, when you have a defensive player out, you go from, especially when it's a star, it's like you go from like the star at that position to a backup, where it's like the drop off from the starter to the backup can be pretty huge. I don't really know much about these Houston defenders in particular, but we're going to see some backups out there, so should be a good spot for Jordan Love.
Yeah, also down 2 starting linebackers.
Yeah, so I mean, seems pretty ideal.
And he's just been awesome. Like that's the thing. Like you put some respect on his name. 4% is disrespectful. The guy's been top 3 fantasy quarterback for 12 games now, crushing it this year. LaFleur, absolute genius. So love me some love. How about that?
Love me some love. Love it. Okay. Anything else? Any other quarterbacks you want to talk about? Jalen Hurts, any interest there?
Speaking of injuries, Giants could be without their top 3 pass rushers this week. They've had an amazing pass rush. It's like the only good thing you could say about this defense. And the 3 players who comprise like 70% of their defensive pressures this year could all be out, or at least one's out, 2 are banged up. So I think that's interesting. Yeah, he's in play. Anthony Richardson, he's just that sort of volatile play you can lean into where, he's only played 5 fully healthy games and he scored 28 plus in 3 of them, something like that. And, your boy Alec Pierce has immense upside, never draws ownership, or Josh Downs. Like if Flacco were starting, he'd be an all-in play for me. What if just Anthony Richardson's more accurate than typical this week? Josh Allen at 2% with a wide receiver 1. Sure, it's a bad matchup, but he can fall into the end zone a few times. I don't know. You can make a case for a lot of these guys, but like I said, I was struggling to narrow down my pool, so I narrowed it down to primarily like the lesser owned quarterback in the sexiest games, and then Burrow and Love.
It's funny that we still don't bring up Deshaun Watson's down to 4,900. He's playing against the Bengals with Amari Cooper gone. Like that, hurts him, but also like brings down the cost of his stacking partners. So like the starting receivers are 4,800 Jerry Jeudy, 3,200 Elijah Moore. Just like the price of that stack is so low, and I still can't get myself to get there. Is that something worth considering in like a Millie Maker setting, or is Deshaun Watson just so bad that we can't do it?
I can't do it. Hilo is going to make some of those teams this week. But no, I can't bring myself to do it.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'm going to think about it a little bit, but I doubt
maybe he gets like a rushing touchdown, and I don't know.
Yeah, he's just so bad. Yeah, see when it says no Neil. Yeah, I mean I think I'm going to play it more through the pass catchers and just like pray that it ends up being a Jameis Winston, just like replaces him in the second quarter is what I really want to happen. Yeah, it's a tough one. Who was it that said, yeah, Iceman says, hit the like button, boys, give these guys some appreciation. Yeah, thank you for that reminder. I often forget on shows to remind people, yeah, please do like the video. If you could subscribe to the YouTube channel, that is very helpful as well. Commenting, all of that, very helpful to grow the Fantasy Points YouTube channel. And of course, if you have not already signed up for the Fantasy Points data suite, I highly recommend that. So we're looking at here the quarterback coverage gel, all these different tools that we're looking at throughout the show are part of the data suite. And of course, you can get that with promo code 25% off with promo code OTB25 or using the little box in the bottom left-hand corner of the screen. Highly recommend it. I love the data suite. I use it constantly. You keep adding to it, Scott. There's just, right when I think that I'm starting to get used to all the cool different tools, now you're adding just like weekly target share maps, stuff like that. It's pretty cool to see that it evolves constantly.
That's right. Yeah. And we're just going to keep adding to it. I think we're like 5 weeks away from something I've been working on for over a year. So excited to get that added.
I haven't actually looked at the target share by week. Where do I find that?
Weekly reports.
Weekly. Oh, nice.
Yeah. Okay. And you know what's crazy? I didn't even know this. So weekly target share report is you could turn the filter on and you can, which automatically changes it to first read target share if that's what you wanted. I didn't even know we could do that.
Very cool.
Super cool.
Yeah, just awesome stuff. Every week something new. Not every week, but constantly.
Yeah, if you go in the search bar and type in Texans, you can see, So what happened after you lost Nico Collins, and you see a big spike for Tank Dell, where Diggs sort of remained the same.
Yeah, just very cool. Very cool. If you have not already checked it out, again, OTB25 for 25% off. All right. Any other quarterbacks to talk about? I think we talked about all of them, I think.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on. Talk about running backs.
Oh, we didn't talk Brock Purdy. I wrote up Purdy and then I deleted him. He's just like always too cheap and always too underplayed, and he's just really good. Like he might be playing at the highest level of any quarterback besides Lamar and Jaden this year. I wrote him up, but then I deleted it. Like I said, I wanted to narrow my pool, but just basically, yeah, don't mind him. Don't hate him. He's okay.
All right. Fair. Okay. Running backs, the chalk, Chuba Hubbard, Kenneth Walker, Tony Pollard. I mean, it's kind of a slow drip down, a lot of sort of chalky plays here. Starting with the top though, Chuba Hubbard, Kenneth Walker, Tony Pollard. What's your level of interest in these three? You okay with 32% on Chuba, 26% Walker, 25% Pollard? Are they fades for you? Would you be over the field? How do you feel?
I think all that, like that's who you're jamming into cash. Chuba, Walker, Pollard, Kyron.
Jake says he wants me to refresh the page, so I'm going to do that because he said he made some minor changes
to
ownership here. So
shout out Jake.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh,
yep. What just happened there? All right. 1 second. Jake just screwed everything up.
Oh. Yep. Jake,
what did you do, man?
All right. Can you go to our ownership page, maybe?
Yeah.
Show is off the rails.
The show is off the rails. Jake just ruined everything. Wait, it's under. Where is it?
Research and reports. Yeah, sorry.
Gotcha. All right, so there we go. Still, Chuba Hubbard. I think these three I think changed or stayed the same. Chuba Hubbard, Kenneth Walker, Tony Pollard. Sorry, we interrupted you. Can you go on how you feel about them?
Yeah, so I think the top four is right. Those are the four running backs you're looking at for cash. Those are the top point per dollar plays of the week. I think with Hubbard, it's just what a cheat code Hubbard with Andy Dalton has been. 5.8 yards per carry. That ranks third best. 21 fantasy points per game, 18.7 XFP per game. Both of those numbers ranked top 6. And his usage keeps getting better. He had a 82% snap share in his last game. It's a good matchup on paper. Washington is giving up the second most yards per carry to opposing running backs. On paper, it all lines up like, yeah, he's a sick play. Like, why isn't DraftKings raising his prices? But it's also, super underdogs, road game. He could get scripted out. Like he's had 4 targets in 5 straight games. So he's being involved as a pass catcher, but not too much production coming on that. And so it is possible he just fully gets scripted out. I like the idea of Brian Robinson as a leverage play. Like, I think you worry about the injury, but it's like just as good, if not an even better spot for him. Always been game script sensitive as well. And so, maybe he scores 2 touchdowns and, Andy Dalton just has to air it out all game. He gets scripted out. Like I said, Kenneth Walker, obviously, I think he should be, based on his usage, at least like 1,000 more than he is, because he's an uber bell cow now. He's got 8 targets in back-to-back games. And then who is he on the ground is like maybe the best pure runner in football right now. At least that's the case by missed tackles forced per carry. Player I was extremely high on heading into the season, a player I love. But if you want an argument against him, it's, it's maybe the worst run blocking offensive line in football. It's not really a favorable matchup on paper. And sure, he's had 8 targets in back-to-back games, but still not too much production with it. I think he's been under 70 yards from scrimmage in both of those games. And so these are just the sort of arguments you want to make for, a player who's going to be owned by a quarter of the field is like, yeah, there's pathways to failure for sure. And, it's a similar thing for Tony Pollard where it's like, okay, he's played great. He looks awesome. It's uber bell cow usage. Like he belongs here. It's also an amazing matchup, by the way, but he could get scripted out. He has 30 receiving yards over the last 3 weeks. And so that's the Titans offense stinks. Will Levis could throw in a pick 6 on his first drive and the game's basically over from there. And so, yeah, there's just pathways to failure, but I mean, those 3 running backs should certainly be, and Kyron Williams, who's in a nuts matchup. Yeah, it makes sense. It's right. It's just, but if you're looking for a way to fade it, there's none of these running backs are a lock, I would say.
Yeah, I think I agree with that assessment. I like them all. I think they all look like you can see why they are getting the ownership they're getting. None like guaranteed to be in my first lineup. I haven't made that lineup yet. Well, I guess we'll make it on the show, so we'll figure out which running backs we put into our first lineups. But yeah, I think I'm right with you that ownership seems fine. Not like I'm going over the field on them. Nice job, I got to say, to Jake. Did fix the issue. I have no idea. I'm curious what happens there where it does that, because that's not the first time I've run into the issue of having to refresh that stuff. So I'm curious what you can do about that. Okay. I wanted to, Icon asked the question, do you guys have tutorials for new members who are just getting into the stats? So I think that means data suite tutorials. I know Ryan Heath has done some stuff. Scott, he's done some really helpful stuff that I've used. Just some of the stuff he's written about. I don't know if you have like video tutorials or is it all written? Scott, what is out there and where can people find it?
Yeah, we have written and video tutorials. Ryan's also doing a video every week where he highlights like the 5 sickest stats he found, and then he shows you how he's working inside the data suite to get there. Also, if you go to the data suite and you click on the top left, there's like a question mark, the help section, and then click on tutorials. Yeah, so top left.
Yep.
Tutorials.
Oh, very nice.
Oh, wait.
Video tutorials. Oh, for this table. So
yeah. So if you go to advanced passing, you'll see it.
Advanced passing, not okay. Let's go. Passing. Wait, do I want to? Yeah, there. Okay. Advanced passing. So if a tutorial has been done on a specific page, you'll be able to find it here.
Yeah. There's
Very
also
cool.
Ryan's like Fantasy Points Data Suite 101. I don't know how to direct you there. Just Google it. And then he has a 201 for like the more advanced users.
You've got the statistically significant page somewhere.
That's true too.
Yeah, a lot of good stuff. So yeah, there is a lot of stuff out there. And if you Google it, I'm sure you'll be able to find anything you need to. Okay. But it's also like generally fairly intuitive. Like it takes a second to realize like when you put on new filters, you got to click this apply button off on the right. So you have to know stuff like that. But like that's 101, very, very basic stuff that you can figure out very quickly. And once you get used to it, I mean, it's a pretty simple thing to operate the data suite. So check it out if you have not already done so. Highly recommend it. Oh, and Jake just posted actually his YouTube link. So he said Jake and Chris Wecht did an hour-long tutorial in 2023. You can find the link in chat right now. Jake just posted. It's actually on Twitter is where he posted it. So in reply to our tweets about this show, you can find Jake's reply there. Actually, let me see if I can copy paste this into YouTube. Oh, see, Ryan also responded, you can always at me in our Discord with any questions too. So yeah, very, very helpful company. People want you to know how to use these tools. So yeah, if you won't have a tough time figuring out how to use the data suite. Okay. Scott, we got derailed there for a second. Just wanted to make sure that people know that yes, there is help out there if you want to learn how to use the data suite. So let's talk about some of the lower. Actually, let's start with Aaron Jones because it's sort of a tricky situation with Aaron Jones. Is he a fade for you at 19% ownership with the injury concerns, or are you willing to take that risk on Aaron Jones? You're muted.
What an asshole. If I do this every time.
I know.
The under hits. Yeah. So Aaron Jones, if I knew he was fully healthy, he would be a lock button play for me. But because we don't know that, it just makes it, increases uncertainty here. If you look at over his last two healthy games, he was at a 75% snap share, 25 XFP per game, which is insane. His first two games, he was at 57% snap share, 13.5 XFP per game. I'm going to guess he's closer to the latter, which isn't great, but you really never know because Ty Chandler is not good. So Aaron Jones leads all running backs in yards after contact per attempt. Ty Chandler ranks dead last. And this is a big game. This is a big game that you want to win. So again, this is another tricky situation. I wish I had a great feel for it other than to say that, like ownership seems about right. You're gravitating towards really good plays here at the running back position.
Is the Detroit defense at all concerned there with, I can scroll to the bottom. Second worst in terms of schedule adjusted fantasy points allowed. Okay.
Yeah, so absolutely. The one thing I'll say to that, so what this is telling you is this is a bottom two matchup for Aaron Jones. Actually, for all the running backs in this game, it's a bottom three matchup, which is partly why, I'm so drawn to Darnold and I like Goff as well. But for Aaron Jones he has the best target share of any running back in football, or behind only Alvin Kamara, 18%. That's better than like a lot of, wide receivers people are trying to play this week. And so the tough ground game matchup, he could rise above it, but still just 6,500 for a player of his talent and especially recent volume. But like you said, yeah, tough matchup. He's coming off an injury. He's also a guy who's dealt with a lot of injuries. And so that was a thing in Green Bay where they were, limiting him and, he would come back from an injury and then he would spend time in the blue medical tent.
Yep. No Aiden Hutchinson, which I don't know how much that affects the run game, like the run defense for Detroit, but I have to imagine it sort of affects everything overall. Just the whole chemistry of the defense changes.
Yeah. I mean, that's huge for Darnold. That's one of the reasons why I love him is Aiden Hutchinson. The Lions have not had a good pass rush this year. They ranked bottom 3 in pressure rate over expectation. And then they lost the guy who's accounted for 50% of their sacks this year. It's not good.
Yeah. All right. Saquon Barkley. going back to New York, first game back in New York, projected for just 5% ownership at 8,200. Any interest there?
Yeah. So I like him a lot. It's tough to, there's a lot of wide receivers you want to pay up for. And I think that's what's driving Saquon down. But you have like a generational revenge game narrative. He wants to stick it to the Giants, and it's a great week for it. They have Kayvon Thibodeau is out. Brian Burns is questionable. Dexter Lawrence, maybe the best defensive player in football, is questionable. And so to me, it looks like a great matchup as well. He's just been balling out, amazing usage, insanely efficient. And I could see him putting together a slate breaking performance. So yeah, he's one of my favorite tournament plays of the slate at just 5%.
Yeah, I think that seems like a pretty strong play. He kind of jumped out to me immediately, even before I even thought of the revenge game narrative. And it's like, yeah, it might affect things a little bit. Who knows? We don't lean into those narratives too much. We're both take a data driven approach, but that does seem like one that maybe they could give him a little bit more run than usual. Who else? Who else do we like? Are we playing the game of Neil has to name all the guys? Is that what we're doing?
I'll say
Mixon
something? Definitely stands out again as an awesome play. You just look at what he's done in his 2 healthy games. He'd lead all running backs in XFP per game, fantasy points per game, 27, 91% snap share, all of the near end zone work. It's a top 7 matchup on paper. He's drawing no ownership. And we talked about this. We talked about, we're always frustrated. Bobby Slowick runs more run heavy than we'd like. And that's with trash running backs like Dameon Pierce, who doesn't fit the offense, and Cam Akers. And so what do you think he's going to do with a healthy Joe Mixon? And so, yeah, I think he's an awesome play. He should be higher owned than 7%. Saquon too.
What are we doing with Trey Sermon and Tyler Goodson?
Yeah, I'm just not messing around with that.
It's a run funnel.
Yeah,
that's the one thing you can say about it is very much a run funnel defense for Miami. I don't know. Yeah, not a ton that I love about that. So that makes it easy if you're just going to be fading them. Kareem Hunt, 41 carries in his 2 games back with the Chiefs. How do we feel about that? 6,000. Yeah,
I'm not really about it personally. CEH is back. I don't know how much that changes the equation, but a dusty Kareem Hunt is not really. I'm just not too excited to play that at 6K in ownership.
Yeah.
Like I said, I like Brian Robinson a lot, and he works as leverage off of Chuba Hubbard, the chalkiest running back. He's been awesome this year when he was healthy. What is it? What's the stat? Let me see. He was averaging 19 DraftKings fantasy points per 4 full quarters. That would rank 6th best on the slate. It's a best possible matchup. If you go back to schedule adjusted and you look at running backs on the ground, it's the best possible spot for him. Rushing. Yeah. And he's also been one of the most game script sensitive running backs in the league, and Commanders are favored by 8 points. He's also leverage off of Jaden Daniels as well. And so, it's the same thing with Aaron Jones, where you kind of worry he's not fully healthy, but it's just like a great spot. And he works so well as leverage. So he deserves a shout, I think.
I have to give credit to Pat Carrain for identifying the Neil Orfield play of the week. Austin Eckler. How do you feel about, with Brian Robinson being, questionable coming in, maybe a little bit banged up? Eckler, he is 5,900, so it's not quite the I usually like those 4,300 backup running backs, but feels a lot like Tyler Algier from last week, where it's just the starter in front of him is coming in banged up in a best possible matchup. If something happens with that starter, he's going to be just an absolute smash play. Any interest in $5,900 Austin Eckler?
Yeah, you know me, I never do this. I never target that. So it's just again, the matchup favors the guy who's going to get the most carries, and then game script is also pointing us more towards the early down workhorse and not the sort of scat back, which Eckler is more in that mold. But you never know. He's played great by efficiency this year, but he's also not cheap.
No, he is 50. Yeah, that is the one thing about it. It's like he's 5,900, so he's not really priced like a backup running back. He's priced like a or 1B type running back. I do like it all. So I'll say I'll be over 1% for sure. Not like it's clearly not like a you want to have 50% of this player type play, but mixed into my lineups. I think he is pretty interesting, mostly because of the matchup, but also because Brian Robinson does come in questionable. But what if we do get the news with Brian Robinson being questionable? Say we get the news an hour and a half. So when inactives come out an hour and a half before, it's an afternoon game. How much interest do you have then in Austin Eckler?
Oh, a ton of interest.
Yeah.
I liked Eckler a lot last week, and he got the usage we were hoping for. So, yeah, I think he'd be a great play. Similarly, James Cook is definitely getting slept on. Ray Davis could sit out, and then you're looking at James Cook in that role that Ray Davis had last week, 85% of the backfield opportunities. He went crazy, and Titans are a top 3 run funnel. And Cook is like one of the most game script sensitive running backs as well. Like you wouldn't really think it or at least, maybe to me, just because he was so much of a pass catcher in college, but that's really been the case. And like the higher the spread, the more he's smashed historically. So really think that's a great spot for him, especially if Ray Davis sits out.
Yeah, no, I like that call out. How do we feel about the Giants guys with Devin Singletary coming back? It sounds like Tyrone Tracy still going to be involved. Is it just, are they too expensive for being a split backfield?
I think so. Yeah, that's how I'll play it.
I think I feel the same way. I'd love to just go to Tyrone Tracy and hope that they do just give him the role, but it doesn't seem like they're just gonna let him run. So feels tough. Chase Brown against the Browns, 6% projected ownership at 5,900. We saw him out snap Zach Moss last week for the first time, but Moss fumbled, and it was kind of like he just was sat after he fumbled. They didn't play Zach Moss like the rest of the game. So do you think it was just a 1-game punishment, or do you think we've actually seen a flippening here, and maybe it's going to be Zach Moss's backfield going forward?
Well, that's the thing is like we just don't really know. Our projections are playing it conservatively and still really likes Chase Brown this week. And you have to think there's, that's more upside for tournaments is like, all right, what if that it was just the sign of the times and he's going to get more work, and any like additional work really goes a long way because Brown has looked awesome. He's played great. He ranks 3rd best among all running backs in fantasy points per snap. So going from like a 45% snap share to a 65% could be really significant. He's fine. He's fine. Like doesn't get me too excited, but he's solid.
Somebody was just asking for the best value play on the slate, and I want to see if we can find anybody who is below 6,000.
It's tough, dude. It's really tough this week.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, if you're not going to those Colts guys, Alexander Madison, any interest there against the Rams?
I don't think so. No,
I don't really either. Just the talent not good enough for me. Algier at 5,100. I guess he has a decent matchup too. I don't feel as good about it this week as I did last week. Man, it is. I'm looking through, just trying to make a case for somebody, and it is not easy. Somebody's brought up Jeremy McNichols if Brian Robinson is out. Yeah, if Brian Robinson is out, you can consider Jeremy McNichols. I still think Eckler would take on more of that, first down role. Like I don't think it would just be like Jeremy McNichols replaces Brian Robinson. I would imagine it's going to be Eckler still getting just like the bulk of the workload there. But at 4,400, I think you could do worse. I'm not finding anybody great. So we talked about Chase Brown. I talked Austin Eckler being somebody I'm kind of interested in. But yeah, don't really want to go much cheaper than that. Can you make a case for Zach Moss? I mean, we made, projected it here as though Chase Brown is going to have the bigger workload there than Zach Moss, but we don't really know. I don't know. I don't think I want to do it. What do you think?
Yeah, that's a little too thin for me. And like I said, I've been trying to narrow down my pool. So stop throwing shitty RB2s.
All right, fine. I mean, he's been the RB1 in all except for one game so far this year. All right.
Where he fumbled, right.
All right, and C Money wants to talk about Raheem Mostert. I don't know. I thought about bringing him up, but you just told me to stop throwing shitty RB2s at you. And
no, this is the one you actually could have. Okay. He's my unofficial Galaxy Brain running back play of the week, just because.
Okay.
So I wrote him up and then I deleted it, so it doesn't count. But yeah, I think he's underrated. I think he's interesting. You know, when he went down at the time of his injury last year, which is like week 16, in half PPR scoring, only 3 players had more fantasy points. It was like Justin Jefferson, CeeDee Lamb, Christian McCaffrey. So he's underrated heading into the season. He's always been underrated for tournaments. I think if you look at his last like 14 games, he averages, 25 or 27 DraftKings fantasy points per game in the top 50% of those. So there's upside there. He had 20 plus touches in his last game. Miami's like rushing attack was finally looking good, looking potent. And so maybe we see that again this week. I love Devon Achane, but he's struggled with health. He's struggled with efficiency the last however many weeks. And we know McDaniel loves Mostert. He was calling him his starter all off season. It could also be a 3-way committee on like a really shitty team though. So there's also that.
Not says Scott can't quit, must start. Yeah, you just cannot quit him.
Well, he's made us a lot of money, Neil. So
yeah, he's been pretty damn good. All right. Any other running backs you want to talk about?
No.
All right, let's move on. Talk about some wide receivers. Top of the ownership, Drake London, 6,900, 28% ownership. Justin Jefferson, 8,500, 22% ownership. And then it's kind of a slow drip from there. Let's start with the top 2, Drake London, Justin Jefferson. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, they're just awesome plays. They're amazing plays. They should go crazy.
Yeah, right on. Nothing more really needs to be said. Both have great volume, great matchups. You like the quarterbacks with them.
The one thing you could say, I guess, is what about the wide receiver 2s? Where are the wide receiver 2s checking in? Because, Mooney is popping as a top value for us. I don't know if Addison is, but I like Addison a lot. Same thing with the Lions too. I don't know where Amon-Ra St. Brown is, but like it's not the most likely path, but I could see Mooney outscoring London. I could see Addison going crazy with the Lions selling out to stop Jefferson. Probably not, but I mean, that's just like a way to consider playing it. But yeah, this is also partly why I like Cousins so much, is like both Falcons wide receivers are popping as top 6 or top 7 values. Sure, the ownership is there, but it's not for Cousins. By the way, Seattle is down both their starting 2 outside cornerbacks, so the matchup looks great. Yeah, they should just go crazy. But this is what's tricky about this week's slate is, ownership's doing a good job, it seems like.
Banking asking, is Mostert projected for 16%? No, it's projected for like 1% ownership. So nobody's really playing Mostert. Unfortunately, in terms of ownership, all of the Atlanta guys are getting some. So Drake London, the top projected ownership. Darnell Mooney, 6 with 16% projected ownership, and even Ray McLeod is actually 9th in projected ownership here at 12%. So going to be some ownership going there, and then Jordan Addison down at 14th. So kind of a fair amount of ownership going to all of the Vikings and Atlanta receivers that you would consider playing. Still, I mean, 5,600. Jordan Addison projecting for 13.1 fantasy points. That is, where is that in the Justin Jefferson, the best fantasy point per dollar play on the slate. Jordan Addison, 11th best on the slate, fantasy point per dollar. Really hard to argue with these Falcons or Vikings receivers, even though they're getting some ownership.
Yeah, Mr. TD says, yeah, what if Addison steals the JJ touchdowns? Yeah, it's certainly possible. But you're the game theory expert. To me, again, yeah, London and Jefferson are the 2 best wide receiver plays of the slate, and ownership got there. So
if I'm poking holes in ownership among these top owned guys, it's pretty clearly Juju Smith-Schuster for me is 17%, way too much for Juju.
Yeah.
Obviously can get there, but you're with me on that.
I mean, it's just he's so dusty. We've hated him. We've said he sucks for how many years now, and now he also picked up a midweek hamstring injury. And so, yeah, Noah Brown is the exact same price. So I like him as a pivot. Noah Brown is a big ass guy, is a player who made us and our viewers a ton of money last year. I think he's good. I think he's underrated. Still just like a part-time player by usage, but did lead the team in targets by like 3, in air yards and first read targets last week. So same exact price. You could argue there's more upside, but certainly once you factor in ownership, that's the case.
It's funny. Jake says he's like the only value there, though, about Juju
Yeah,
Smith-Schuster, who, of
exactly.
course,
Exactly.
drafted Noah Brown in the cage match this week. So, so you do
Wow.
have another one right there at the same price. Ray McLeod, 4,400. I think I like that better than Juju, at least. I don't know. It's pretty close. But we'll see if we can identify. Trey Tucker, 4,200. Another pretty strong value. So I dispute that Juju is the only value play here. Malik Neighbors, I mean, highest target share in the NFL this year, only 7,500 projected for 18% ownership. Daniel Jones, sort of chalky. How do you feel about Malik Neighbors?
Yeah, like if there's a case to be made, he should be the wide receiver 1 this week by projections, or I guess he is the wide receiver 2. And honestly, like Darius Slayton going nuclear with like amazing volume just like has me even more bullish on Neighbors. Darius Slay is questionable. Yeah, all that checks out.
Yep. All right, who else do we like here? Deontay. I mean, this matchup again. I think I'm probably just leaning into this Carolina Washington game quite a bit. Deontay going to be a big part of that for me. How do you feel about 6,600 for Deontay Johnson?
Yeah, I mean, if he was fully healthy, he'd be a lock button play. Certainly shouldn't be 6,600. DK just like has been disrespecting Deontay all throughout his career. He's always way too cheap. And I've always just played him and made a lot of money off of him. So, especially for cash. But yeah, he's on the injury report with ribs, hamstring, ankle injuries. The only thing that could stop him is the only thing that's ever seemed to have stopped him, which is the blue medical tent. But your star for value, I think Jalen Coker is a little interesting at the stone minimum. We got some positive coach speak this past week, a little bit more playing time as well. So, yeah, what if Deontay gets hurt, or even if not, what if they just, I don't know, Coker's more involved. So, just worth shouting that out. But yeah, Deontay's a great play. The matchup's awesome. Commanders are giving up the most fantasy points per game to wide receiver 1s for the 2nd straight year. So, yeah.
What about Xavier Legette? I mean, he had one game where he got hurt really early in week 5, but in weeks 4 and 6, he had like, I forget what the number is, but a high number of targets on like 80% route participation in those 2 games. So if you just take out the one where he got hurt early, he's actually been really involved, seemingly the wide receiver 2 for the Panthers. Any interest in Legette?
Yeah, he's in play. I don't know. I like Coker just because he's so cheap and you need the savings this week. But yeah.
Yeah. All right, back up to the top of ownership. So we talked about those Browns guys. So we have obviously Amari Cooper got traded. Elijah Moore projecting here for 15% ownership at 3,200. You have
yeah. I don't play Wan'Dale Robinson. So I'm not playing the Browns Wan'Dale Robinson. I'm not playing the Falcons Wan'Dale Robinson.
All right, then. I mean, fair enough. Jerry Jeudy though, 11% projected ownership at 4,800 as the new wide receiver.
No, I love David Njoku, so I'll talk about him. I'm
okay.
Not going to chase any other wide receiver tethered to the worst quarterback in football.
Okay. Let's see. I mean, you already. So we talked about Jamar Chase earlier. Do you want to go into that at all again? I mean, 2% projected ownership at 8,400. You kind of already gave the spiel when we were talking about quarterbacks, but you have a lot of interest there, it sounds like.
Yeah. I mean, why is T. Higgins for tournaments projected to be so much more highly owned than Jamar Chase when, Higgins has had one good game this year with amazing volume, where Jamar Chase is basically the wide receiver 1 in fantasy with like massive slate wrecking upside. He's displayed that this year. He's displayed that all throughout his career. 2% ownership doesn't make any sense to me. So,
yeah.
And so, but really what that is that's a bet against Jefferson, which, that's a tricky bet to make. But when you're talking about 22% versus 2%, yeah, let's build some teams, Neil. We're going to do this in maybe 30 minutes or so, where it's like, what if Chase is the guy you needed? And then it's like, okay, do we play Aaron Jones as leverage, or do we play Jahmyr Gibbs or David Montgomery? And so I think that's, that's where the upside is. So that's my thoughts on that.
Yeah. Not says smash them both in. We can try. It's tough this week just because you have no value at running back. We don't have those cheap running backs to really smash in those top wide receivers, but there are, I think, some decent value wide receiver plays. So we can see if we can try to do that at least when we're building lineups later. Terry McLaurin, obvious. We don't really, I don't think we need to spend a lot of time on it because I love Jaden Daniels. Obviously, Terry McLaurin going to be a big part of those stacks. Any issue with 10% going to Terry McLaurin?
No, just an interesting note on this is like, how we griped earlier in the season about how Cliff Kingsbury was back doing the stupid thing where he just leaves his wide receiver one aligned to the left like 90% of the times. That's actually awesome this week. If you look at schedule adjusted, the Panthers are giving up them. Yeah, go back to schedule, click on left wide receiver. And so perfect matchup for a guy who, is lined to the left 66% of the time. Carolina's like good against the slot, good against right wide receivers, but where Terry McLaurin's going to be all day. So that's a great matchup for him, and over and above Noah Brown, who we were just talking about. So like Terry McLaurin, he's a good play. It's just, you worry a little bit about game script in this game, but if Carolina pushes them.
Tank Dell is one that I kind of struggle with. I think I ended up liking him quite a bit just because he's projected here 8% ownership, 6,500. I mean, we took a look at the target share with no Nico Collins up to 28.1% in week 6. Going up against the Packers, only 6,500, not getting much ownership. How do you feel about Tank Dell?
No, I feel great about it. So like we talked about, Justin Jefferson, Drake London, Malik Neighbors, all great plays, and the ownership backs that up. I had Tank Dell right behind those top 3 as like a top 4 cash play, and the ownership isn't there for him. And it's weird, this is a little bit of sources thing. I was telling you last week on the show, my sources were saying Tank Dell is actually fine, or like he looks great in practice. The big issue has been that chest injury he suffered, but like the bruise was like so ugly to look at in the locker room, but he's fully back from that. And then you factor in the bump without Nico Collins. You stack up Tank Dell's best ever career games by route share, and you have the 2 games without Nico at the top where he's at like 98% route share, 92% route share. And then the next closest game is at like 81%, or most of his games are under 75%. First read target share, you do the exact same thing. 2 games without Nico, 45%, which is insane, 43%, which is insane. And then next closest game, 33%. Next closest after that is like 24%. And so it's just like he levels up in such a massive way without Nico Collins, where now he's the alpha. I mean, it's a 2-game sample size, but that's what we're seeing through 2 games. And then on top of it, it looks to be like a pretty good matchup. Green Bay is not as scary as they once were. Certainly their pass rush has been bottom 6, which has been historically really important for Tank Dell. So I think he's at ownership one of the best plays of the slate.
Love it. Okay, so we're on the same page with Tank Dell. We talked about Jordan Love earlier as a quarterback that we have interest in. Jaden Reed coming in, he's 7,200 coming in at 8% ownership. Is he your favorite pairing partner with Jordan Love, or are there other Green Bay receivers that you also like?
It would probably be Jaden Reed. Our guy Nick Spinola broke this down in his Coverage Shells article. That's free if you want to read it this week. Basically, like the schematic matchup, nothing really points to like a specific wide receiver going off. Schedule adjusted, does favor Jaden Reed because Houston's softer in the slot, and I think they're without their slot corner this week. But ultimately, I don't think any of that really matters for Reed. He's just like the sort of guy who can go nuclear whenever.
Yeah.
And if you look back at what he's done with Jordan Love over their last 8 games together, 21.1 fantasy points per game. So he's just been a monster, and he's not really priced like it. So I like him a lot as a tournament option. I think, within that, what is he, 7,200?
Yep.
Yeah. So like Malik Neighbors is a better play, whatever, but you factor in ownership. Yeah, I could see Jaden Reed being the guy you needed for sure. Like, factor in touchdown upside, right? Like what's Neighbors' touchdown upside versus Reed? And touchdowns are really important.
Do you have any interest in a Christian Watson, Romeo Dobbs, anybody else?
Not me personally.
Okay. I think maybe a little bit of interest in Christian Watson, but not like a standout.
I mean, we were just talking touchdown upside, and Ryan Heath has the stat he puts out like every week where Watson averages the most XFP per target because all he gets are deep targets and end zone targets. So yeah, I can see that.
You brought up Josh Downs earlier, so we kind of already did that conversation. But at 10%, do you think you're playing it?
Not if it's not an Anthony Richardson lineup, probably.
Okay, yeah.
If we had Joe Flacco, I'd lock him in probably.
Yeah. Geno is chalky, but we don't have a ton of ownership. I mean, DK Metcalf just 6% projected ownership. JSN 5% projected ownership. Tyler Lockett 3% projected ownership. So it sounds like we're expecting Geno to be in there, but kind of spread out who he's going to. Do you have any interest in just playing any of these Seattle receivers as a one-off?
Yeah, I do like DK Metcalf. He's one of the top XFP buy lows, positive regression candidates. He had 100 yards in 3 straight games, and he flopped the next week. It was kind of a tough matchup, and he flopped last week, but his volume was insane. He had nearly 28 expected fantasy points. He also, part of that was Geno Smith. I think only 38% of his air yards were actually catchable, and he got unlucky beyond that. He had 2 catches and 57 yards negated due to penalty. So he just seems like poised to explode. The matchup, I kind of like it for him. AJ Terrell's really struggled this year. Gave up 19.3 fantasy points per game to Pickens, Devonta Smith, Mike Evans, Deontay when he shadowed them. Again, Ryan Heath doesn't like the schematic matchup. It's all pointing towards Noah Fant, actually, which I could kind of see. But it's just 6,800 for, he ranks 5th in XFP per game. Regression should be coming. But like I said, Geno's chalky, and I see more arguments against it than not.
Okay. So Devontae Adams got traded. Jacoby Myers is doubtful. Trey Tucker, just 4,200 as, I guess, the wide receiver 1 for Las Vegas at this point, obviously not counting Brock Bowers. I like the price. I don't know. Do you have any interest in Trey Tucker?
I've been saying the Rams are the worst pass defense in football right now for quite some time. And I just ran the numbers. So we have ass allowed, and by ass allowed to wide receivers, Rams rank worst. They're actually a reverse slot funnel where they're really good against the slot, really bad outside. He's fine. It's a slate starved for value, but not someone who really excites me.
Okay. Yeah, just as a one of the better value plays on a slate that doesn't have a ton.
Yeah, again, the matchup is sick. Only runs 18% of his routes from the slot, so that looks like it sets up nicely. I don't know how much you can trust him. He hasn't really done anything, but
what about the Rams?
You need to find savings somewhere.
So Cooper Kupp is currently questionable. I imagine he's going to be low owned. Nobody going to be playing, keeping a, 7,500, whatever he is, in their lineup while he is questionable on the afternoon slate. So to me, it feels like a really strong swap. If he ends up playing, Cooper Kupp would end up being like, oh my God, he's playing against the Raiders and nobody's playing him. Maybe we should just jam Cooper Kupp. On the other hand, because we don't know, maybe Jordan Whittington, Tutu Atwell, these other Rams receivers don't get any ownership, even if Cooper Kupp ends up out, and there'll be some of the better value plays on the slate. I don't know. Who do you like from the Rams? What's your read on the Cooper Kupp situation? What do you think?
Yeah, I like the argument on playing a Kupp where maybe he's limited in his return, but if that's the case, why would you play him? And so you get a guy at 1% who last time we saw him play a full game, scored 35 fantasy points, had 21 targets. That was the second most by any player since 2016. Great matchup, slot funnel matchup. The part of the problem with this week, though, is there's a lot of these players. Like I said that about Jamar Chase. Others have made the arguments for Tyreek Hill. So Kupp is 1%, Debo is 5%, AJ Brown is 4%. And so you have a lot of these guys who I guess work as leverage off of Jefferson, who no one's really playing, who have slate breaking upside. Yeah, I get it. I mean,
yeah.
Who do you play if he doesn't play? That's a bit trickier to me. And I don't know what's Tutu's price. Maybe throw a dart on him. I'll have an update in the Discord, but as of right now,
5,000.
Yeah, as of right now, no one's really exciting me.
Yeah. I'm trying to think who is in the afternoon game. So it's Rams with the Raiders. Now I'm blanking on who else is playing later. Give me 1 second. Because that does matter. Like who can we swap to in that? I mean, you can always do 2v2 swaps.
That's a great
easily.
point. Yeah.
Panthers Commanders are in that afternoon slate. So and Chiefs 49ers. So you do have some like pay up options if you want to. I don't know. Yeah, I think it's more viable because we have some pretty strong later games that you can swap onto. So at least interesting. I'll probably play a little bit of Kupp just in case he's active, and then obviously need to swap if he isn't. So somebody brought up today in my Discord, and not a player that I am on really, but that and I have not fact checked this, but he was saying that the 49ers have one of the slower secondaries in the NFL. Might be a good spot. Chiefs coming out of their bye week. Andy Reid coming out of a bye week is historically a good thing. I'm not really that interested in Xavier Worthy at 6,400, but I thought it was an interesting point that maybe Andy Reid schemes to get his fast receiver the ball against a slow 49ers defense. I don't know. Is that how do you feel about that?
I mean, I don't know how much the speed matters when you can just leave a safety back to kind of take care of that. But no, he was popping by some of the stuff I was looking at. Best schematic matchup of any wide receiver if 49ers stick to their general tendencies. But no, 6,400 doesn't really pop as a value to me, but you could argue he's the sort of player who, you're chasing the spike week, and he like Deshaun Jackson could have massive spike weeks out of nowhere. But no, wasn't high on my radar.
Yeah, same thing for me. He projects so poorly point per dollar that like I didn't really think about him. But then somebody was doing the Galaxy Brain talk, and I was like, you're actually making some interesting points. Again, I did not fact check him on the speed of the 49ers secondary, but I thought it was at least an interesting thought. Because it has been. When you
they just play him 10 yards off the line, but yeah. Maybe that matters. It did for Deshaun Jackson when I don't know, 8 years ago when we were playing DFS, we did look at that.
Yeah. So looking at the Chiefs, since Rashee Rice out, it's been Kelsey and Juju getting the targets a little bit more here for Xavier Worthy. You just think like logically, you wouldn't think that Andy Reid is just going to keep peppering Juju Smith-Schuster with targets. Like you'd think maybe they try to get it more to Worthy. I don't know. Maybe we're just wish casting a little bit. All right. Who else? Any other receivers we need to talk about? I don't think I'm going to Amari Cooper, but sort of interesting at 5,800 first game with Josh Allen. Do you have any interest there?
No, it's a worst possible matchup.
Yeah,
but I'm excited to see what he does.
Let's see. Anybody else? You talked about Noah Brown already. You talked about Jalen Coker. Do you have anything else you wanted to add about Jalen Coker? I think you brought him up when we were talking about quarterbacks, maybe.
No, he just saw more usage in his last game, and there's been positive coach speak all week, and he's cheap.
Okay. Any other wide receivers that you want to talk about?
There's a few more in the article, but no one really jumps out right now.
I guess AJ Brown, Devontae Smith. Do you have any favorite between those two?
Yeah, it would definitely be AJ Brown, who has more upside. It's on paper, it's a great schematic matchup, but we can't say that with certainty because they changed their tendency last week against Cincinnati, where it's like, yeah, obviously you should play more too high up against Jamar Chase or AJ Brown. Ryan Heath had an interesting note where Brown really struggles against pressure, as does Jalen Hurts. But like I said, Giants are down, could be down all three of their like only good pass rushers and defensive players. He's going to get the Deontay Banks shadow, but I think he just eats him alive. And so does our ass expert, our resident wide receiver guru, thinks he wins in a similar way to T. Higgins. And you watch that tape and T. Higgins was destroying him. And so, yeah, it's just basically, single digit ownership for a guy who could break the slate. And so there's a lot of that. Like, I don't know. I'm not the lineup building expert, but does that make sense to partially fade a Justin Jefferson and load up on a Jamar Chase, AJ Brown for more upside relative to the field?
So yes, I do a lot of that kind of thing, but I don't know that I'm going to do it with Justin Jefferson here because I like Justin Jefferson so much in this spot with Detroit. So I do think that in general, that is what I often am trying to do. Just like, okay, this guy's chalky. I like these other guys just as much. I'll cut back on the chalky guy to play more of the lower owned guys. I don't know.
Well, I know a lot of the best DFS players, what they do is like they start off building what they think is going to be like the chalkiest lineup or the chalkiest core in GPPs, and they build that and then they intentionally play against it. So like maybe they would start off with Jefferson and they would swap him out with Jordan Addison, and then they would play a Jamar Chase or AJ Brown, and then you theoretically have this massive edge on the field. But like you said, Jefferson and top point per dollar wide receiver, and he immediately jumped out to me as, I actually wrote this up 2 weeks ago, and the Everything Report is like, he's going to go nuclear when he comes back off the bye.
Yeah, no, I think Jefferson is strong enough that 22% ownership. Like, I don't think I'm trying to cut that out in order to get to those guys, but I think, there are some, this might be a slate where I'm just completely flipping the build to some extent, playing some of those cheaper running backs to get, even though you don't have super cheap, but like some of the cheaper, grosser running backs to pay up for double elite wide receiver, that kind of thing is probably how I'm playing it rather than fading Jefferson. But yeah, I like a lot of these. I like a lot of the expensive receivers on this slate, which is a tough thing. We'll see if we can build lineups that have multiple of them in together. Jameson Williams, the only other wide receiver that I think I would like to talk about. He's only 6,000 in that same game environment. Do you have any interest in JMO?
Yeah, I think he's a really good play. This is a tricky one. Like Amon-Ra St. Brown versus Jameson Williams. I could see them both hitting. Again, I like Jared Goff this week. I could see Jameson being the one to go off. I could see Amon-Ra being the one to pick off. It's tough to call it. It's a good schematic spot for both. Heath prefers Jameson. It's tough for me to say that with any certainty when St. Brown really lit up this defense last year, and he's been the top wide receiver against too high since the start of last season. But yeah, just massive upside now, and it's not the days of like last year where the offense was so much more highly concentrated towards Amon-Ra. It's really a lot closer now, and Williams is balling out. I think he ranks top 3 in ass. So I just like both a lot. I think that's a good spot to kind of mix and match.
Bing King is thrown off by you saying ass expert. Are you new here, Bing King? I feel like you've been in chat long enough to know what we're talking about. We're talking about average separation score.
Right.
So when we're talking about ass experts, that's what we're talking about here. All right. Any other wide receivers?
I don't know.
We talked about all of them. We've talked about every wide receiver. Yeah, good job. No, I'm sure there are more that I would talk about if we had all day, but no, let's move on and let's talk about tight ends, because pretty interesting tight end slate in my opinion. Colby Parkinson projected for 20% ownership at 3,800. David Njoku 18% at 4,100. Brock Bowers 14% at 5,800. Zach Ertz, Travis Kelce. A lot of really strong options this week. Let's start with the chalkier Colby Parkinson and David Njoku. Do you take issue with either of these ownership numbers? Is there one that you would be jamming, one that you'd be fading? How do you feel?
So let me just say, I've never been a tight end in the flex guy. We did talk about it a bit last year when Trey McBride, David Njoku, Evan Ingram were all going off, and those were like good weeks to do it. But this is like the best the tight end position has looked all year by a landslide. There's a lot of players I like at the tight end position. It's also, like you said, it's a slate starved for value. So that is a way to get cheaper. It is a way to get unique. So keep that in mind as we're talking about tight ends. Yeah, Kobe Parkinson, he's not popping as the top value for us, but he's certainly up there. If you want to get off of him for tournaments, the argument's easy. It's the chalky tight end of the week never hits, and Cooper Kupp is back. So, you could look back at, he ranks second in route share, he ranks second in target share, all that good stuff. But, if Cooper Kupp's back, I think the equation changes dramatically. David Njoku being chalky is a little bit disappointing to me because I thought, I hyped him up last week and I thought, he'd be a little under the radar again this week, but certainly not the case. And it's warranted this high ownership in just 7 full quarters of work. He has 13 targets, 11 first read targets, 9 catches, and just 38 routes. That equates to a 0.34 target per route run average. For perspective, only Malik Neighbors and Rashee Rice are above that mark. And now you remove Amari Cooper, who ranked top 10 in target share. So obviously the volume's sick. We haven't really seen much from him because of these injuries, but let's not forget at the tail end of last season, he was putting up mid wide receiver 1 numbers. It's a good matchup. Baltimore shredded the Bengals defense with their tight ends, and then Hunter Henry went nuclear a few games before that, if I'm thinking of the same defense. But maybe not. But Baltimore tight ends, 132 receiving yards and 3 touchdowns against the Bengals 2 weeks ago.
Nice.
But my favorite tight end play at the GPP position is George Kittle.
Kittle, you're just leaning into Kansas City being absolutely demolished by tight ends all year. That's not the reason. You just like
George even Kittle. If that wasn't the case, he would be my number 1 tight end. So he leads the 49ers in target share this season, ranks second among all players or non-running backs in XTD per game, leads all tight ends in XFP and fantasy points per game. But among wide receivers, he would rank 8th in fantasy points per game. He's priced as just the wide receiver 25. And so the tight end position doesn't have a lot of upside. And like upside is what we care about for tournaments. Kittle has exponentially better upside than any other tight end, especially any other tight end on the slate. He's exceeded 20 DraftKings fantasy points in 8 of his last 15 games. So over 50% of the times since the start of last season, no other tight end has more than 4 such games. It is the best possible matchup. Chiefs giving up 18 fantasy points per game to opposing tight ends. That's 30% more than any other defense. Jawan Jennings is out. That's important because there is a redundancy to their role. Ultimately, it's like a lean into upside thing where like maybe he flops 50% of the time, but the other 50% of the time, he puts up a score unrivaled by any other tight end. There's some concern. Chiefs have a really good pass rush, so maybe he's blocking more, running more chip routes. But to me, especially at this 6% ownership, he stands out as the best. It's just tricky to fit him because, like I said, there's not a lot of value this week.
Yeah, no, that is kind of the tough part of this. But you sort of alluded to it that this could be a 2 tight end slate. I've never been one to like set a rule to not allow for a tight end in the flex. So I definitely do it more than, most people do the tight end in the flex thing. But this week in particular, I think is a pretty strong week to do so because you have some of the better values are David Njoku, Colby Parkinson. Some of these tight ends look pretty good. And then you have some elite tight ends also in, you just laid out the case for George Kittle. I mean, Travis Kelce, if we want to look at bring back up the Chiefs target shares without Rashee Rice, Travis Kelce 31% week 4, 25.6% in week 5. They've just been leaning into him, so he looks pretty good.
So that's what I've been saying is like what if he's just Rashee Rice with a tight end designation?
Yeah.
Because it feels like to me, looking at the usage and the production as well, is he stepped into the Rashee Rice role, who was stepping into the old Travis Kelce role.
Right.
A lot of first read targets. Production's been good, 7+ catches, 70+ yards in back-to-back games. So I think he's a strong play. I think he's up there. I personally like Kittle's upside more, but he's it certainly makes a lot of sense. You have Juju being so chalky, and I think Kelsey's a better bet for that role that we all want.
Yep. With you there. Zach Ertz, to me, is just playing against Carolina. We already like Jaden Daniels. 3,900 looks pretty good. Any issue with 12% going to Zach Ertz?
Interesting schematic note is Carolina plays zone at the third highest rate. Zach Ertz yards per route run nearly quadruples against zone. That said, I think it's a guy without any upside. So he doesn't strike fear into my heart. Kobe Parkinson doesn't strike fear into my heart.
Yeah, I think that is reasonable. Kyle Pitts, I mean, you look at schedule adjusted against the tight end position. Seems like a good, where is it? Second best matchup for tight ends against against Seattle. Any interest in Kyle Pitts?
Again, Seattle's down there 2 starting outside cornerbacks. So the equation changes a little bit there, but yeah, he's fine. He doesn't excite me, but he's fine.
Dalton Schultz, looking at the target share for the Texans without Nico Collins, has been a bit better, as you would expect. It was better last year, so he kind of took a dip when they had 3-star receivers, but back up to 15.8% in week 5, 21.9% in week 6. Any interest in Dalton Schultz?
Yeah, you look at that, his target share basically doubled. If you just look at the last 7 quarters since Nico Collins went down, he has a 0.30 target per route run average. That would lead the position. It's way up from what it was with a healthy Nico Collins. Packers are a top 3 matchup. He's strong. This is where it gets tricky. Is there's a ton of tight end value. So maybe it is a tight end in the flex week. Jatavian Sanders, if no Tommy Tremble, only 2,900. That's a great way to save. Grant Calcaterra, without Dallas Goedert, is another one of those. We didn't talk about Brock Bowers, who I love. He's just an absolute rock star. I think you can quibble with the upside for tournaments, like how much touchdown upside does he have relative to a Travis Kelce? But I just love the player so much. The role is awesome. The matchup's good.
Actually,
Noah Fant, I said I really like. I think he's getting slept on. If you look at the schematic matchups for Seattle, everyone wants to play Geno, but he is far and away the best schematic matchup. His route share jumped to 76% in his last game. Saw 6 targets, caught all 6 for 63 yards. So yeah, he averages more yards per route run against zone than JSN this year. So I think he's interesting. Like I said, there's a ton of tight ends.
Yeah, there are just so many good tight ends this week. I do think that this is a week where I'm probably going to have more than usual 2 tight ends in my lineups. A couple things to touch on before we start building lineups. First of all of your cowardly coworkers, Scott, are calling me out while we're on the show. First, Jake calling me out for a poorly projected cage match lineup. Like I care after I've beat Jake 4 weeks in a row, won the cage match
4 weeks
in a row.
Damn.
I did unfortunately drafted 2 backup running backs who I thought were going to be the starters this week, Tyrone Tracy and Ray Davis.
Oof.
Both of the starters came back to hurt me there. So this might put an end to it. The cage
but
match
what's your stack? Because your stack has been going crazy.
Yeah, my stack is Jaden Daniels with
okay.
With Terry McLaurin and Deontay Johnson. My biggest regret is that I took Deontay Johnson instead of Chuba Hubbard. And I talked about taking Chuba Hubbard, but went with Deontay instead. And that was why I put myself in a position where I had to take crappy running backs. Had to take a chance on running backs who were not guaranteed to be the starter and lost out on that bet. But I'm still going to beat Jake just because I beat Jake every week. That's just kind of how it goes. So not worried about that. And then Johnny Proctor calling me out for my low crowns balance. So just getting shamed across the board by fantasy points employees. It's very sad. The other thing I want to talk about, Kenneth Walker is now questionable, downgraded to questionable.
No way.
We're in this show with an illness.
No way.
Yeah. So what are we doing with? I mean, we're going to be playing some. What's the price on Zach Charbonnet? Do we need to think about if Kenneth Walker is out? Zach Charbonnet.
You passed him.
Did I? Okay. There
Control
he is.
F, my guy. 5,300.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if he's out, he's going to be the
Gonna be a-
chalkiest running
Going to be a
back.
smash play.
Yeah, there you go.
And it's on the.
I don't think he'll
slate,
be
so
out
we'll
though,
know.
not with an illness.
Yeah, hopefully not. Hopefully not out. All right. So we've been through all the positions. I think it's time now. Unless do you have anything to say about defenses?
Do you?
What I have to say is Fantasy Points does a really good job at projecting defenses. So sort by projection here and play avoid the chalk.
Oh, Vikings defense is really interesting.
Yeah, 1% projected ownership there.
Throw Aaron Jones on there.
Yeah. I don't have any.
Falcons defense really. Yeah, that's a great way to go unique.
What
Falcons
about,
have like a touchdown in like 4 straight. It's crazy.
What about either Bengals or Browns? I mean, the Browns obviously playing against Joe Burrow, not ideal, but also they're a pretty good defense. The Bengals, a bad defense, but they're playing against Deshaun Watson. I don't know. I was kind of looking at them as potential places I'll go. Don't feel that strongly.
Yeah, no, I think that's fine. I think both those are. I think Bengals, yeah, great odds at scoring a touchdown.
Yeah, trying to see if there's any others.
Browns are cheap.
I don't think we need to spend a ton of time at defense. Miami, I mean, pretty strong defense. I don't know. Maybe they just don't. Anthony Richardson just doesn't throw enough for it to be a great option. One to consider, maybe. But the Bills, man, projected really well here. 11% ownership. All right, let's build some lineups. I don't think we need to spend a lot of time on defenses. Okay. Do you want to start? You kind of lead the way on the first one. Or do you want me to? I could.
Yeah.
All right. Well, then I'm going to start with. I'm just going to lean into Jaden Daniels with Deontay Johnson and Terry McLaurin. Or I could go Chuba here instead of Deontay. I'm going to throw Deontay in there for now. So we do need some value in the lineup. Sounded like you were really into David Njoku as your favorite value tight end. I'm just going to start there.
Yeah, but I mean, this isn't unique at all. Like, maybe we need to.
Well, I mean, we can
go extra on the game stack with an Ertz or Sanders or Coker or.
Well, we're going to need some value in this lineup, so I think Ertz there makes some sense. Now, can we go? Let's see if there's a cheap defense because I have thoughts on. I don't think we're going to be able to fit. Yeah, we're not going to be able to fit Jamar Chase here. That was my dream, but it's not going to happen with only 21,000 left. But still, let's see. Browns defense, I think, is 2,500. Interesting enough. Tennessee, actually, I mean, they really strong defense, and Josh Allen is historically a little bit turnover prone, so I don't totally hate that.
Okay,
let's just throw that in there. Yeah, we don't have cheap enough running backs to make Jamar Chase work, unfortunately. We have 62.33 left. So here would be, I talked about, I kind of like Austin Eckler. I know you're not into it, but this would be the type of lineup to play in where we are chalky with Daniels, McLaurin, Deontay Johnson, David Njoku. That's where you could throw in somebody like an Austin Eckler to just bring down the ownership quite a bit. Just that one really off the wall piece in another chalky lineup can work out sometimes. But let's see. We threw Ertz in there. I mean, do we want a triple stack with Noah Brown?
Not really.
All right. We could do Chuba Hubbard for the double Carolina too. I don't hate that.
Okay.
All right, so we're just full on game stacking. All right, other running backs. So Kenneth Walker now, I don't really want to use him right now just because he's questionable.
Mixon?
Yeah, where's Mixon?
Same price.
7,200. Okay, so now we have a $5,000 spot for a wide receiver. I know Jerry Judy's there. Tutu Atwell. Christian Watson. We could swap out Zach Ertz for Noah Brown.
Okay. Makes sense.
And then have a different flex. Okay. And then we have 4,900 for the flex. Jerry Judy.
It's your lineup.
DeMarcus Robinson. Oh, yeah, this is my lineup. Okay. If this is my lineup, go double Cleveland. Maybe. I could also do Christian Watson here. We've got Joe Mixon on the other side. You said, ooh, so I'm just going to do it. All right. There you go. Use the full salary cap. We have Jaden Daniels, double stack with Terry McLaurin and Noah Brown, 2 bringbacks in Deontay Johnson and Chuba Hubbard. We have Joe Mixon and Christian Watson, so a little mini game stack there as well. David Njoku, 1 off, and then Titans defense. Love it. So I'm gonna bring that crowns balance even lower here. Nice. That's for you, Johnny. Okay. Let's go back and build another one, and this one you're gonna have to lead, Scott.
Got it. All right, so we're gonna do a Darnold lineup, I think, the next one, but first I just want you to humor me here. Put in Jefferson, London, Neighbors. Put in Chuba, Walker, Pollard.
We're just not gonna. This is not gonna be possible, I don't think.
No, so I just want to look at this. And Pollard, yeah, and so like,
yeah,
this is the chalkiest of the chalk. What's the way around this? What's the best way around this? And so you have
Jefferson down to Addison.
Jefferson down to Addison. I like that. Let's do that. Let's do Brian Robinson instead of Chuba. Do we want to do Bijan instead of Walker in London?
Sure.
Or better yet, maybe Saquon instead of Neighbors.
Okay.
All right.
Still need to find some value.
Yeah, take Pollard out for now. Throw Daniel Jones in there. Now you got a stack cooking. Let's throw Njoku and tight end.
Calcaterra.
Let's Commanders defense. That's expensive. Oh well. Do we want to do a tight end in the flex? Do we want to go crazy with it?
I mean, you could do a Calcaterra bring back on the giant stack. Or Theo Johnson to the double stack it.
No. What about, yeah, let's look at wide receivers. Let's put in a Coker and just see what happens.
All right, so now we're doing the defense against wide receiver.
Oh, right. Duh. Okay. We'll pivot off.
We could also take out the Commanders defense if we wanted to. I mean, it's not the worst correlation there.
All right. Well, take Coker out. What about Trey Tucker? Screw it. YOLO.
YOLO. All right, 5,200 flex.
I don't like it. All right, take Tucker out. Throw Calcaterra in. That was your idea. I didn't hate it. Maybe just swap him out for Njoku.
All right. 5,150. Who do we got? Xavier Legette.
This is rough.
Whittington. Trey Tucker. Noah Brown. I guess we just used him in the last one.
Yeah, it doesn't really make sense for this lineup, I don't think.
Yeah.
You want to pivot off Barkley to AJ Brown? I don't know. I need to recruit the optimizer to help us out, I think.
All right, you going to?
Yeah. Yeah, maybe Commanders is a mistake. Why don't you drop that down?
Then you could put Coker back in there if you wanted to. Instead of Commanders, go to.
Okay, let's see what that does.
Dolphins or Cleveland.
Yeah, just pick the cheapest one.
Titans. All right, try that. Do I want to put Coker back in there and fit?
Yeah, let's see if we can.
And then we would have 8,400 left. That would. Jamar Chase.
Boom. There you go. Done.
All right. So we have Daniel Jones single stacked with Malik Neighbors. We have a couple bringbacks in Grant Calcaterra and Saquon Barkley. We have Brian Robinson in tentatively, of course, questionable. We'll have to keep an eye. Jordan Addison, Jalen Coker, Jamar Chase, and Titans defense rounded it out. Beauty. Look at that beauty. All right.
Definitely feels like more unique in comparison to yours.
Yeah, I mean, Daniel Jones, Malik Neighbors is not going to be super unique. But yeah, you've got some more, like Jalen Coker, I think will be pretty low owned. So we've got some of those.
Let's do a Darnold double.
All right. Addison, the other?
Yeah. Let's throw Jameson in there too and just see if we can get it to work.
There you go. All right. So down to 47.40 left per player. Again, we're probably going to need a cheap tight end in this one. This could be a double. Maybe we fit in. I don't know if we'll be able to fit in Brock Bowers. Let's throw in the cheapest defense again. Just lean into it. We can swap that out later if we need to. So there aren't really any running backs that we like below 5,900. So I think we're going to need to go relatively cheap in the tight end and flex spots to allow us to pay up a little bit.
Yeah.
So do you want to just go to a Njoku, Parkinson? I don't know. What do you think at tight end?
Yeah, Zach Ertz maybe. Or who's cheaper than Ertz?
I mean, Parkinson is cheaper. Calcaterra is cheaper.
Yeah, any of those are fine.
I think Ertz without Jaden Daniels might be like combinatorially. Not many people will have him solo without Jaden Daniels, I would think.
Yeah, but you also question the upside with Ertz.
Yeah.
But I mean, I guess that's all those guys.
Yeah.
Let's do Calcaterra
instead of Ertz.
Yeah. And then we could always move up.
True. All right. So now we have 6,000 left per player. I think. All right. So let's look at our running backs.
Chuba and Pollard.
5,400 left in the flex. I mean, Charbonnet
would be sick,
out.
right?
Yeah. Kind of a gross range. I mean, I don't hate Leggett here. It is really.
Oh yeah. What about Fan? How much is Fan? Is he even cheaper? Oh, Jonnu Smith was my Galaxy Brain tight end.
Do you want to go there?
Dude, he's not cheap. It's like 3,800, but
oh really?
Yeah.
Yeah, Fant 300 more than Calcaterra, so we could go there and then Xavier Leggett.
All right. Well, what if we go Trey Tucker in the flex and then go up at tight end?
So now we could go to Njoku, Schultz.
Yeah, let's go Njoku.
Upgrade defense.
Sure.
Browns, Texans. Who do you like? Seahawks for all the leverage on all the Atlanta players.
Did our projections like them? Let's see what the projections say. So important because this is going to be the one we win the million. Browns, Texans 6.5. Texans win.
All right, there we go. All right, here's when we're winning the million. We got the Sam Darnold double with Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, Jameson Williams on the bring back in that one. We have Chuba Hubbard and Tony Pollard at running back, David Njoku, Trey Tucker, Texans defense. Beauty.
Boom.
There you go. 3 lineups in. One of them winning the millie, a larger millie than usual because it's just a $10 entry. So I don't know what the actual field says this, but it's going to be a big one. All right. There you have it. That's 3 lineups, Scott. We've been through the entire slate. Again, if anybody wants to check out the data suite, check it out because new stuff coming constantly in the data suite. Scott, where can people find you? Find your work coming up?
Scott Barrett, DFB on Twitter, fantasypoints.com. What about you, Neil?
Yeah, I'll be doing showdown breakdown for Sunday Night Football at Fantasy Points. I'll be doing a full written breakdown. Always doing showdown content on my own YouTube channel, The Flannelverse. I believe the link is in the description of this video. I think I'm gonna try to find time, Scott, to do a breakdown of the Sunday morning football. Maybe I'll do a live stream. Not sure yet how I'm gonna do that for that on my YouTube channel today, and then tomorrow night going to be back to take a look at what the Fantasy Points tools are telling me tomorrow night and break down that Sunday Night Football slate as well. So that is where you'll be able to find my stuff. Again, the Fantasy Points showdown breakdown is behind the paywall, so you can check that out. And then I'll be doing video breakdown as well on my own YouTube channel. And you'll be on with Johnny tomorrow morning, I assume.
That's right.
Behind the paywall at Fantasy Points, so check that out as well. Cool, right on. Well, this has been fun as always. This is Outside the Box Week 7. If you haven't already done so, please subscribe to the channel, like the video, comment. All of that is very helpful to us. Thank you all for hanging out with us, and we'll be back next week.
What?
Why are you shaking your head? You're welcome.